we are losing from the lack of more longitudinal studies and part topics of general interest, as a humanity could be done to Mexico that would be special for Mexican data. For that dialogue, we have Marta Moreno Perez from Coneval, from Enrique Huerta Wong from WAPAEP, and Julieta Perez Amador from Colmex. Welcome. So, I already sent you an email with the idea, but you will start with 5 minutes opening, first round, and then second round, another 4 minutes discussion, and then we open to questions, and we enforce that. Okay, so.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invite on behalf of Dr. Hernandez Licona. It's really important for us at Coneval to be here in this type of seminars because we always like to, of course, share our experience, but most of all because we learn so much from other institutions and other countries. Should I start with all the two questions? Okay. Okay. So what I think is special about the case in Mexico and mostly in recent years is that we have. I think in the past years there has been a link, a really strong link between the information that INEGI provides and the fact that the institutions have to use that information to make their estimates. This is something that in the particular case of Coneval is really strong because by law, by the social development law, we need to use this official information. That is the one that he produces. So I also think that this has led to having a more transparent way of doing things and of doing estimations. For example, when INEGI they publish all their databases in the website, and since people can have that database and can they will say, well, I could calculate like the poverty rate for 2012. So we also put in our website the programs. They're actually in three different statistical packages in R, which is free. So almost anyone could actually have, who has a computer, download the databases from INEGI, download the program from our website, and see how poverty rates are measured. In the case of what we are losing because of the lack of panel studies, well, I think they already said a lot about that earlier. But mostly, I want to talk about the fact that until now, we can say just to some extent some things about the changes in poverty through time. We can say if there was a reduction in poverty or an increase in poverty, but we really don't know what happened with those households. So having this information as an institution that is not only in charge of measuring poverty, but also evaluating social policy is really important. And it, like we said earlier, it would complement the work we were doing already. And well, finally, I want to say it would help a lot to know what's happening with the dynamics of poverty, but also to know if social policy is actually working. I'm going to talk more in depth about this tomorrow, but we've already made a longitudinal study about social programs, which I will present tomorrow. And it's really important to know whether some social programs are actually working in some in attacking social deprivations and welfare.
ladies first. It's not me that I'm not following the program. Okay, well, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here. It's exciting to be back to Aguascalientes. INEGI is like my second house, you know. Anyhow, well, demographers, I am a demographer, and I feel that I have this strong, I don't know, I can represent my demographers right now, although maybe they don't agree with me, everybody who is there. We have used longitudinal data in Mexico since the 1970s. The World Fertility Survey and all the fertility surveys that came after that have sections on fertility histories and marital histories. So there are retrospective calendars of when you have kids and the partnerships that you have. And we have been using this information since the 70s, and I think that we have been very influential in show the determinants of fertility, determinants of marriage, etc., etc. But what these surveys have in common is that they have a big problem, which is that you have longitudinal retrospective data, and you have to explain what happened in the past with a status that happened in the present, right? So you have only education, labor force participation, which is education, you can agree that maybe is a proxy of things that happened in the past. But for example, women's labor force participation, we have it only at the time of the survey. And we have always tried to use that question as something to explain fertility and luciality. But in reality, we don't know if how was the work history of these women. So then I also want to mention that the National Survey of Youth, which has a big budget and a big sample, it started in 2000, then 2005, 2010, and they also have retrospective questions about the transition to adulthood, which is a topic that is super important, and I'm going to say that that's one of the things that we're missing because we are not having longitudinal prospective data. We are missing all the discussion, international discussion about the effects of globalization on the transitions to adulthood. I want to say that there is also a lot of colleagues that have used very creativamente the National Employment Survey, la ENOE, because that one has a rotative panel, and then you follow for 5 trimesters people, and then there has been a lot of studies about the dynamics of the labor force entry among women. So if you put all the pieces together, because there are different surveys in many different topics that give you a little piece of a puzzle, I think that we have been very creative in putting all these pieces together and tell stories. Okay? So the first thing that I'm going to say is that why do we need longitudinal data? And I'm going to say why we want it, and I say like because we deserve it. We have been working with these data that are not ideal for 15, say 1970, 30 years. So I think that is the time that we deserve this kind of data, right? That's the first thing that I want to say. The second thing that I want to say is that fortunately we have the EDER. Maria Eugenia Zavala couldn't be here today, but the EDER is a national demographic retrospective survey. It has been taken twice in Mexico, one in 1998, and the most recent one is 2015. And that one has a life history calendar. That means that they come to your house, they ask you an interview, and then every single year of your life, you need to say all your history about work, about family, about fertility. I don't have a minute, sorry. Okay, well, with that survey, we also have worked a lot. And I'm going to just briefly say, I'm not actually the best representative either, but I'm going to tell you that one of the most important things that we have find in different topics and different socio-demographic research is that individuals don't take decisions through the life course by themselves. They do it in households. They do it in life. Like the life history of your parents affects the life history of you. And the life history of your siblings also affects the life history of you. So it's not only having longitudinal prospective or retrospective data shows that everything is dynamic by itself, but it's also dynamic within the households. And the life history of people is just linked. And I can say more.
Please.
Well, yeah, thank you, Alfonso. Thank you, Gerardo, for this invitation. To see the INEGI. I'm glad to be part of the agenda. I will read because I have to say in 5 minutes what I usually say. I found interesting that this session is called Experts. I was scared before to come, but after viewing the 3 outstanding speeches, anticipados, I am really wondering what I'm supposed to hear. Still, I have to say something. Okay, this stuff is called On Longitudinal Data and Longitudinal Surveys, some fieldwork reflections from 10 years social mobility survey, which I wrote with my colleague and co-author Roberto Vélez-Bernández. We are part of the team in charge of the social mobility surveys conducted by CA, the longitudinal data cross-section surveys that explore the difference between socioeconomic status of individuals and their parents. At this point, we have 2 national surveys, 2006-2011, one metropolitan, Monterrey 2011, one regional in 2015, 12 coastal states, one state level that is running right now, 2015. We're in the middle of a discussion now to design the National Survey 2017 with our colleague here, Ray Campos, and now we are in this conference hub to listen and learn about longitudinal surveys. Some of the main results that we have learned is coming in our book, released next week. So in what follows, I want to share briefly our discussions on longitudinal data and longitudinal surveys. When we were planning our 2011 national surveys in 2009-3, we discussed extensively about the plausibility of longitudinal survey in a panel way versus longitudinal data in cross-section, the research questions and the budget directed for us to make decisions on longitudinal data from a second cross-section. From longitudinal data analysis by using recall batteries, we know that mobility is very scarce in Mexico, mainly in the corners of the socioeconomic distribution, that mobility levels are different for women and men, and that there are important differences in comparing urban versus non-urban regions. Origin is outstandingly frequent equals to destination in Mexico. Longitudinal data are good enough if we want to diagnose how much mobility we have in general. We need longitudinal surveys if we are interested in more detailed analysis, as the outstanding speakers said before. For instance, if we are interested in exploring in depth 2 rates of equal mobility and asking under which conditions certain people move, like men or workers. We visualize now 2 opportunities for the next generation of the MOBI surveys. First one is to extend them in time. Second one is to extend them in scope. Second one is to extend the sample size big enough to make them representative to state level, which we are doing right now in Puebla. As for the first issue, broadening in time, let me share some comments. In the discussion section of the 2011 Survey General Report, we discussed the need for reviewing in depth what is happening along the cycle of life. The education history, it is apparent that some children leave the school very early, and then going back, and then drop out, and then become successful or not. The same may be said for occupation or migration histories. Longitudinal data dependent on recall are weak on details in comparison of longitudinal surveys to address those questions about the cycle of life. We need longitudinal surveys, but this discussion faces at least 3 issues rooted in Groups and Hansen from the team of the ESID Michigan. With adequate planning, multiple methods, and enough information, time, money, skilled staff, perseverance, and so on, 90% to 100% location rates of panel participants are possible. We are wondering now if we have all those elements at hand. And we need information, time, money, skilled staff, and perseverance. And perseverance is the only thing that we have in hand right now. Again, research is always about the body available. How many people, as well as their quality and experience, particularly participate in a particular research design study, depends on how much money you have in the pocket or your perspective of getting funds. You are desperately, which is depending on your experience attracting funds. How many people and how skilled they are participate in data gathering also depends on the budget available. Some months ago, we started with a small model tracking the 2011 survey, and we learned something key. Let me recall for once that Mexico is still involved in a kind of civil war. Tracking households door to door is extremely challenging in these conditions. We need people in any part of the research process, but due to the fact that we do not have a lot of people involved in longitudinal service, the how running those in fieldwork is still under construction. There we are. Any comments?
Thank you very much. I'm gonna sit here and integrate a bit because I really, in the next round, just keep it. I would like you to, so at the moment, we already kind of, in the first round, it was more about what is being done. Okay, that's nice. We have retrospective data. There are some efforts. I would say the most important ones we just talked about. But I really like to challenge you in the next 5 minutes to say, what is the limitations of what we got? Okay, and what we would like to have, because we have here in INEGI, and we need to convince them to put their money, right? By the way, INEGI, from international, is ONS. Okay, so they're guys with the money. So this is not a place to say, I have done this, I have done that. You know, we have measurable data. No, let's challenge. What do we need? And what is not fantastic of what we have? Good question.
Well, what do we need? I think I would start with, like you said before, maybe demographers have used a lot of longitudinal data all over time. But I think we need to be more explicit of what we can do with this and to make not only people in academic institutions, but also in government institutions to use them. We were talking about the ENOE earlier. There you have a panel, and it's barely used as a panel. You use it like each trimester you give unemployment rates or labor income, something like that. And we're not using the panel. I know you can follow the same household for five quarters, right? Because it's a 20% replacement. So, but as I understand, that 20% of households that are replaced with households with similar demographic and socioeconomic characteristics. So you can maybe work with that and try to make a synthetic panel more for a longer time. So first of all, to inform people in every area that it's there are some some longitudinal studies and surveys that can be used and should be used as that. And on the other hand, something that Rebecca was talking about earlier about administrative records, I think it's really important to move forward to this because it would save us a lot of money and time if we could use all administrative records we have that are actually helpful, but because some of them aren't. And we could save a lot of money and time if we could cross information from, let's say, the CIFORE, which is where all the beneficiaries from social programs of Solar, with some survey from INEGI and stuff like that. And well, that's it.
Who has a question?
So the question is, what topics we can do with what we have, and why if we have done some mirrorless work, why do we need another longitudinal? So that's.
Well, I can go back quickly to the example to make an analogy between the example that Rubalcaba told us about poverty. Like when you measure poverty in two cross-sectional times, points in time, you will get, I don't know, I'm going to say something. I'm sorry, I didn't pay attention, but I don't know, 10% of poverty. Okay, and then you measure in the next cross-sectional another 10% of poverty. And then you are assuming that nothing is happening, right? That or maybe it's changing the down, etc. But the dynamics, I mean, he showed very well, the dynamics of poverty, the life experience of poverty is very different. And maybe you estimate the percentage of people who have ever been in poverty, then you get a 40%. So, and the same happens with sociodemographic, I'm sorry, I have that bias. With sociodemographic behavior. Like you can see, for example, how many persons are in cohabitation today and in the next census, although we didn't answer in the census, by the way. And then you will say, oh, cohabitation is not increasing. But it turns out that if you have a life history of a marital history, you will see that at least 50% of young people right now is entering cohabiting agreements. So we're not, we're missing all the dynamics of the life history of persons, right? And I'll go back, now that I have the microphone, I'll go back to the transition to adulthood problem, which is, well, not problem, the study of transition to adulthood. And we find by using ETHER and comparing ETHER to other surveys, the National Survey of Youth, for example, is that when you ask people, at what age do you left school? And then they give you, 15. And then you assume that the person has a preparatory or whatever is the equivalent, right? But with the ETHER, which asks you the life history, every single year of your life, whether you are at school or not, then we find out that at least 10% of young people have intermittent school careers, even in secondary, even in high school. So that means that we are missing these dynamics of what happened. And I'm going to give you, I can give you many examples of what kind of research we can do. But I'm going to give you, in 1 minute, I hope, an example of one that I really like a lot. And it's not about demography, so don't worry. It's about grade retention and high school completion in the US. It's done with data from the National Survey of Youth that we didn't talk about it, but it's a survey that was taken in 1979 in the US. It's a cohort of high school people who were followed through life, and now they are interviewing the kids, and the kids are already getting married. So you have a lot of research about intergenerational transmission of demographic behavior or social behavior. And well, with that survey, for example, this is the typical question: kids that are retained in school, that retain la reprobación. They are less likely to complete high school, okay? And then that's what the research says at the beginning. But then, because they have been following these, the kids of these 1979 persons, they ask a lot of questions about not only the typical socio-demographic ones, of course, education, occupation, income, etc., but they also ask a lot of things about cognitive abilities, a lot of things about scores for exams, standardized exams, a lot of things about parent-child relationships in the household. Of course, you have all the information about divorce, cohabitation, remarriage for the parents, etc. So this study has found that yes, there is a correlation. Okay, 1 minute. There is a correlation between being retained in elementary school and drop out from high school. But obviously not everybody who is retained drops out of high school, right? So what's the variation? So the variation, for example, is that kids that have good relationships with the parents, then they are more likely to do well in school. And it doesn't matter too much if they were retained in school or not. These kind of stories we can't do because we don't have any information. I mean, the best you can do right now is with ETHER we have a lot of things, but with the best you can do in other surveys is like, what was your social status when you were 15? And then we're again going back to the past, staying in age 15, but we don't know what is happening. And all the studies done in the US or in many other countries are showing that there is a lot of dynamics that has to be not only with the socioeconomic variables that we know, but also with cognitive, social, cultural, and even biology markers that are like following through time. So I don't know, there's many things that we can do.
Thank you, Julieta. Enrique, I'd like you to continue on the question, but I'd like to challenge you to going to topics that, for example, are fundamental for the future in Mexico, like obesity. We don't have data for that. We don't have data for this. So policy relevant is not, like, it will be important in terms of pensions, important in terms of, the tax that we have available.
Because you established the precedent, I will go back to Spanish, right? Una de las cosas que hemos estado diciendo es seguridad social es un indicador clave en el contexto socioeconómico actual porque el contrato social tendría que cumplirse, la igualdad de oportunidades tendría que cumplirse de manera funcional en la diferencia que tenemos entre algunas personas que se han esforzado, que tienen más talento, y algunas personas que no. Dicho eso, esto como típicamente lo evaluamos. Bueno, lo que hacemos típicamente es evaluar historias educativas, evaluar historias ocupacionales, evaluar historias de logro económico y ver cómo esto se entrelaza entre sí y cuáles son los principales drivers de todo eso, ¿no? Para eso, si bien es cierto que podemos recurrir a análisis cross-section, como hasta ahora hemos hecho, podemos hacer diseños que ya hablaban aquí de shadow panels, por ejemplo, el trabajo de Campos y sus colegas. Todo eso, como ya también Luis lo apuntó antes, es mucho más sólido y en realidad podemos hablar de relaciones causales prácticamente sí, solo si tenemos estudios longitudinales. ¿Okay? Dicho eso, no sé si sea chamba de INEGI. En algunos países lo ha sido, por ejemplo el caso de GSS, ¿no? En Estados Unidos, pero GSS tampoco es la herramienta más sólida en los Estados Unidos para analizar este tipo de temas, ¿no? Entonces, queremos todos que todo sea chamba de INEGI, pero no estoy seguro que sí lo sea, ¿no? Es decir, ahora, necesitamos eso para poder establecer no solamente, como traté de decir, no solamente vía la recordación todas esas historias, sino tener información más fáctica que no dependa de ese esfuerzo de recordación. Si a los 6 años salí de la escuela, luego regresé, luego por alguna razón tomé todas las hipótesis, por ejemplo, en términos educativos sobre decisión y selección, pueden ser probados siempre con muchas otras herramientas y podemos hacer malabares estadísticos, econométricos, pero tan así como el rigor, el rigor del diseño experimental, la falta de diseño de control experimental no reemplaza absolutamente nada en términos, el rigor de las técnicas econométricas no reemplaza el control experimental, tampoco es fácil reemplazar el rigor de la investigación de entonces,
thank you very much. I think it's time to open for the public for some comments. There are hands there in back, another hand here, another hand here, another hand here. Thank you.
Gracias, buenas tardes por su participación, de Tino Vargas, de la UNAM. Me congratulo, pues, de que finalmente el MEGI esté haciendo de este tipo, y el CIDE también, de hacer este tipo de talleres y de dar a conocer la necesidad de hacer estudios longitudinales. En mi experiencia, después de haber trabajado 15 años con este tipo de herramientas, cuando llego a México me doy cuenta que todo es de sección cruzada. Y trato de escarbar por dónde puedo empezar una investigación. A mi experiencia le ha pasado a otros colegas que llegan y quieren hacer investigación y sucede lo que sucede, que no podemos. Y la respuesta que nos da un estudio longitudinal es totalmente diferente de lo que nos da un estudio transversal. Y muchos de los estudios que yo he estado realizando y que muchos de mis colegas mexicanos hemos visto, por ejemplo, estudiando la evolución de la pobreza, han sido reportes transversales, todos ellos, la mayoría de estos, ¿no? Claro que con la ENVIP como que nos da una estrategia, una visión diferente. Y la razón es que un estudio longitudinal da una respuesta distinta y más profunda que un estudio transversal. Entonces mi comentario es, pues, invitar a varios investigadores a que realmente pongan atención a este tipo de estudios que yo estoy de acuerdo con los panelistas, que no necesariamente el INEGI lo tiene que hacer, pero sí, como en muchas ocasiones yo he dicho en intervenciones previas al día de hoy, a Eduardo Sojo, le he insistido en que debemos hacer más énfasis en estudios longitudinales que transversales. Gracias.
Thank you very much. There is another, yeah. There is a button, yeah.
Hola, Martín Layún, Instituto Nacional de Salud Pública. Realmente estoy de acuerdo con el comentario respecto a la importancia de este seminario, pero quisiera poner en el radar el estudio de salud de las maestras del Instituto Nacional de Salud Pública, que iniciamos en 2008. Tenemos 115,000 maestras que hemos seguido desde entonces. Tenemos un seguimiento activo por encima del 80%, un seguimiento pasivo arriba del 90%. Y es un esfuerzo que se ha hecho fuera del INEGI, ¿no? Quisiéramos poder hacer y trabajar con el INEGI porque sabemos que hay muchas herramientas de gran utilidad. Este estudio, yo refuerzo un poco la idea de que tenemos que tener estudios que nos permitan no solamente evaluar políticas públicas, sino diseñarlas. Entonces, nosotros estamos en la labor de generar información sobre factores de riesgo para enfermedades crónicas. Ahora, en términos de una sugerencia de temas de relevancia que se pueden estudiar, yo creo, importantemente en México, quiero hacer eco de la presentación de Ruiz Rubalcaba. Nosotros también en el Instituto Nacional de Salud Pública nos hemos empezado a interesar por el impacto de la violencia y de ambientes violentos en el desarrollo de enfermedades crónicas, no nada más de salud mental, sino diabetes y enfermedad cardiovascular e inclusive cáncer. Entonces, yo sí creo que en el país tenemos muchos recursos y hemos generado muchos datos. Es el momento en el que nos tenemos que sentar a colaborar y de forma creativa traer y acercar todas estas fuentes de información.
Thank you very much. Yes, there is another question.
Yo quisiera traer otra dimensión a esta discusión. Yo estoy del Colegio de la Frontera Norte y una de las cosas que nos hemos dado cuenta en el Colegio de la Frontera Norte a lo largo de los 30 años de la institución, una institución que tiene 8 sedes a lo largo de la frontera, y es la necesidad también de hacer, pues, no solamente de innovar en las metodologías, como es este caso, estudios prospectivos, con encuestas prospectivas, pero también de carácter regional, porque si se quiere vincular esto con políticas públicas, el país tiene 32 estados y generalmente cuando yo veo estudios que vienen de encuestas nacionales como estas nacionales, hay muchas limitaciones para hacer análisis regional. Por lo tanto, dependiendo de cómo fue levantada la muestra, vamos a ver reflejado el monstruo de la Ciudad de México, de la zona metropolitana de la Ciudad de México, en términos de la identificación de elementos de contexto que pueden estar detrás de los fenómenos que estamos analizando. Entonces yo invitaría a las instituciones, incluyendo no solamente el INEGI, sino los centros de investigación, de la necesidad también de pensar en estudios en encuestas longitudinales, pero también con carácter regional para si efectivamente quiere influirse en cuestiones de política pública.
Maybe time for another one.
Muy buenas tardes. Yo vengo de la Secretaría de Salud, soy epidemiólogo y recientemente acudí a una reunión de investigadores en la Universidad de Oxford y en la que se conmemoraba el aniversario del nacimiento del doctor Richard Doll, que es uno de los, digamos, grandes santos de la epidemiología. El chiste es que yo creo que este estímulo que se está presentando aquí es internacional, o sea, no solo es que en México tenemos que hacerlo, la verdad es que me di cuenta, porque lo vi, que en la India, en China sobre todo, están iniciando una encuesta ahorita, un estudio prospectivo de 1 millón de personas, en Inglaterra que tienen el banco seroepidemiológico de 500.000 de personas, el estudio Cadori también de China, y otros estudios de la India también muy notables. O sea, el resto del mundo está despertando la necesidad de los estudios, de estos longitudinales. Yo creo que un punto muy importante a tocar es respecto a las dificultades que tenemos para contactar, lo señaló muy bien la doctora Wong, para contactar entre bases de datos. Lo que están haciendo en otros lugares del mundo es utilizar programas heurísticos que toman datos similares para ir acercando de una manera más lógica los prospectos que se parecen unos a los otros entre distintas bases de datos. Al lograr esto, disminuyen mucho su trabajo de campo. Solamente se aplican a pequeñas cantidades de datos que solamente tienen que ser verificados en campo, no todos. Y otra cosa que me agrada, porque también como que volvió al tema, que cuando yo empecé a hacer investigación en cortes hace aproximadamente 12 años, o 18 años, perdón, lo que hacíamos es que preguntábamos un montón de cosas. Y cuando decíamos de sangre, decían, ¿la sangre para qué? ¿Qué tienes todo? Y actualmente está volviéndose a poner en el templete o en el escritorio la sangre y los biológicos debido al proyecto del genoma humano. Entonces yo creo que, si bien ahorita se ha hablado mucho de demografía, en términos de salud y por el gran problema de enfermedades crónicas no transmisibles que tenemos en México, creo que vale la pena considerar estos 3 factores para el futuro. 1, utilizar programas heurísticos. 2, como dice la doctora Bomi, dijo muy bien, buscar la manera de que los siguientes récords y registros que existan en este país traten de tener una identificación única, aunque creo que llegamos demasiado pronto, porque ahorita todos los que tienen CURP son niños. Y el problema es que está en los adultos, o sea, para nosotros los médicos. Y tercero, nuevamente enfocarnos en esos factores biológicos que antes eran así como ¿para qué? Y ahorita ya tienen una relevancia debido a las enormes diferencias genéticas que tenemos, incluso en un México mestizo.
Muchas gracias. I think I'm gonna go there. I just going to put forward an idea that probably will be discussed later on, but I think also one thing that we need to discuss is there are some studies, but there is a lot of private data in it, and it needs to make, it's public funds. It has to be public. Okay, so I would like to come back to this discussion later, but we cannot advance without a protocol of we are investing in public data. It has to be public. So I'm going to close down here. I'll get a small one.
Just quickly on the topic that if it's INEGI who needs to take the data, of course not. If you have a very specific study that you want to do, yes, it's not necessarily INEGI. But INEGI gives us demographic surveys every 5 years now, and they're going to start giving us a new one, which I'm very excited about, the National Encuesta de Hogares. And now we're going to have data on migration, fertility, mortality every 2 years. And I would love that instead of giving us that, you give us some longitudinal data. And it has to be the nicest study, but just the basic demographics. We don't need more cross-sectional data on migration, and it's better to have longitudinal data. And I think that it's time, we've been waiting for 40 years, so it's time for us to have longitudinal data as part of the national estadística de interés nacional. ¿Por qué los datos regionales no son de una estadística de interés nacional? That would be a question.
Okay, with that comment, I will close down this expert dialogue. We have food, and then we come back at 14:15 for the lecture of David Weir. Okay, so thank you very much.